Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm Rachel Loeffler. I run our professional business at Politico. And before the next editorial conversation, I'd like to thank today's sponsor, Entergy, for their support for today's programming. So, as energy demand surges, and we've been hearing about this, fueled by data centers, manufacturing, and low-carbon industries, our grid must keep pace with smarter, cleaner, and more resilient solutions. I'm joined by Haley Fisackerly, President and CEO of Entergy Mississippi, to talk about how that's unfolding in the Gulf South and how energy is fueling economic growth in the region by elevating its voice in the national conversation. Haley, thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate Politico hosting this. Very timely and great conversations today.
We're excited about it. I'm excited about talking to you. And I want to start at the national level. What are your thoughts on the energy landscape in the U.S. right now?
Well, it is exciting, and it's changing drastically. Today, you've heard all different dynamics that's impacting that landscape. But stop and think for a moment how much we are dependent on electricity. It's changing because of electrification, it's changing because of onshoring, and it's changing also because of data centers. But we, the consumer, are causing that change. And I look around the room, I look at the tablets, the smartphones, the laptops. How many of us are going home every day and plugging those in? You may even be driving an electric car home and plugging it in. Post-pandemic world has changed the way we work. We work more remotely. Communications technology and how we use those devices drive greater usage. Some estimates show that when we go do those internet searches, if you use AI, it could use 10 times as much electricity as a normal search was. So our insatiable appetite is growing because of this. Add to that the onshoring. We're seeing new manufacturing coming back to the United States. We're seeing data centers, both from cloud storage and to AI, that are driving that example. And we're seeing it all across the landscape and how it's impacting that. We're just last year, the company I operate for the Entergy Corporation, Entergy Mississippi, signed a deal with Amazon Web Services, who is investing $10 billion in building 2 data center campuses in Mississippi. And that's bringing huge energy needs, but also, as we'll talk about it, it's also bringing economic investment that's really making a difference and helping us build a more resilient grid. Because if the demand is growing, then the resiliency and the reliability of that grid has to. And without that growth, it's harder for customers to bear that cost. And so these partnerships are going to create real opportunities for us.
I want to actually turn now specifically to your region in the Gulf South. I do want to let you know I do use a phone and a computer. I just happen to have paper cards today. So the Gulf South Energy Corridor, it really does serve as an example of this kind of growth. You mentioned a little bit, but maybe you could go into what's happening in the Gulf South region specifically as far as demand, and how does that relate to the larger U.S. energy picture?
So, Rachel, a little bit about Entergy. We're a public utility holding company that operates 5 utilities in 4 states: Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Texas. And we're right there in the heart of the Gulf South area, sitting right on the Gulf of Mexico, or should I say Gulf of America. And we're right on the Mississippi River. And there's a huge industrial complex around there. Some petrochemicals, ammonia, all of that is existing there. And it's always have been driving significant growth. Our sister companies in Louisiana, Texas have always averaged the last 20 years about a 5% compounded annual growth rate in that industrial sector. We are now seeing that across the Entergy footprint, because now that growth is not only continuing to happen along the Gulf Coast area, it's moving north into northern Louisiana, into Mississippi, into Arkansas, all across the area. Are now predicting that we're seeing a compounded annual growth rate of greater than 12% in the industrial sector alone. Why is that happening? So I mentioned AWS's investment in Mississippi. Meta also is building their largest data center in northern Louisiana, and our sister company there. We have seen Hyundai Steel announce a major green steel facility in South Louisiana, followed by a blue ammonia facility. That's just what was announced this year. These are driving huge investments, it's driving huge growth in those areas, creating jobs and economic ripple effects like we've never seen before. So, and if you think about the Gulf South region, the country is very dependent on that. Why is that growth happening there? Well, one is the infrastructure. There's an old saying, you can't walk across Louisiana and Mississippi without tripping over a gas line. Well, we're crisscross the state with natural gas facilities. CO2 capture also is being talked about and deployed with the infrastructure needed for that. When you have that much industrial infrastructure, the transmission lines, so we are very well blessed with a huge infrastructure in that area. You add to that available workforce, available land, low-cost energy, and clean energy, it's the perfect recipe that is fueling the growth that we're seeing in the Gulf South area.
It's fascinating. Could you speak a little bit more about how this growth is contributing to the communities Entergy serves? You started, but maybe you could go a little bit more into that.
You know, that's the part I love the best. You know, a lot of times these projects are so large. They overwhelm people. And what we're looking at, what we're seeing is when they come and make these investments, it has a huge impact on all of our stakeholders, our customers, our employees, our communities, and of course our owners. But let's take the $10 billion investment that AWS is making in Mississippi. 40% of our customers live below the national poverty level. We have an obligation to serve. We have new reliability standards, new standards to meet to improve resiliency and reliability and reinvest in the grid. Without growth, we end up having to push that cost onto our existing customer base. You bring a large customer in like AWS, the volume gives us a greater denominator to spread that cost. That $10 billion investment also has a huge impact on that community. It is estimated in Mississippi that will generate $80 million a year in new ad valorem taxes to the local governments. In Mississippi, they're required to split that 50% with local educational. We're going to change the lives of students in the schools. Think about, just like we're having to invest in our infrastructure, local governments are needing to invest in their infrastructure. Without growth, how do you do that? Now, they'll have the money to float the bonds to improve water systems, roads, schools, and who knows, and not impact the tax base in the state. So it's a tremendous opportunity like we've never seen before.
It's fascinating. And I want to come. But let's move from the great story to also talking about what you see as the key challenges in building a more resilient grid to meet these increasing demands and how Entergy is working to address them.
So, as we mentioned earlier, if there is greater demand and we're more connected today and our greater appetite for electricity, that means not only do we need more of it, it's got to be more reliable. It's got to be resilient. And where we are, we definitely have our experience with weather, hurricanes, tornadoes. Today, we're even seeing thunderstorms that pop up that produce 70, 80 mile per hour winds that are equal to a Class 1 hurricane. Out west, we're seeing droughts that fuel wildfires. We're seeing massive floodings that's happened. So we're all dealing with that. So utilities really have to think about how do we build this opportunity to reinvest is a new opportunity to build a better, smarter grid that is more resilient, can do that. So one of the challenges is the investments we have to make. Well, that's where the growth comes in, as I said earlier, to help create that. We definitely are going to have challenges is more of these data centers being built by AWS and Meta, they're going to create additional jobs, but they're taking lots of jobs to build these facilities. So finally, we're going to have challenges to meet the workforce needs, the supply chain needs around this, the wait time now for turbines and transformers are growing, the materials needed that are something we have to work through. We need stability in energy policy and some of the decisions that are being brought up here, because whether we're talking tariffs or whether we're talking about the tax, whether production tax extension to various things, we have to look at that. We also, as we invest in new generation, we have the opportunity to invest in cleaner generation.
I wanted to ask you about that.
And so, and I think, you know, we talk about that, and so yes, some of the conversations earlier, there's this dash to gas that's happening. Well, these units we're building we're building a number of the Mitsubishi units. They're 33% cleaner than the previous generation of fleet, so less CO2 coming out of them, so that's a benefit. They will also have the capability of capturing carbon and sequestrating, and so they're built to those components. They'll have the capability, when economic, to flip to hydrogen. We're going to have to look more at nuclear. That's lots of the conversations. My friend David Brown, I agree with him 100%. We definitely need to be keeping those options open. We operate 5 nuclear power plants in our service territory. In Mississippi, we operate the largest single unit in the country at the Grand Gulf Nuclear Power Plant. It's been through a license extension through 2044. In fact, this is the 40-year anniversary. Last month, we would have been retiring that unit. But because of license extension, we're continuing to run it. But as David said, we have the opportunity to do further license extensions, now looking at 80 and 100-year opportunities, because those facilities are so robust, the new technology in them allows them to continue to run. So the challenges we have to meet is to take advantage of what we have, reinvest in that, and also use this opportunity to invest in new technology that are more efficient, more reliable, and cleaner to better serve the needs of our grid.
So I want to end with a question about collaboration, because everything you're talking about requires that. For your region, but also at the national level, how do you achieve the collaboration needed at the local, state, and federal levels? And what do you need most from policymakers to ensure we can continue to meet our nation's energy goals? Because that's our audience today.
Well, we're doing it today,
Yeah.
and thank you for doing it. You brought together a great mix of policymakers, politicians, and all together and having these conversations. We need to have that. We need to have discussions. Everybody's busy talking, but sometimes we need to slow down and listen. We are facing the greatest opportunity, I believe, in our country's history with the growth here. Energy dominance, AI dominance are going to be key to that growth. What we need from policymakers is grant us stability. The investments we make take billions of dollars, take years to make. And if we're constantly stopping and starting and changing on those policies, it makes it hard to follow them through. It makes it inefficient. It adds to the greater challenge. We can do this. Any challenge that's been thrown in this country, we can meet it. What we need together is to share the ideas, come together, and create the stability in the policy area to allow us to go forward. The opportunities for our children and our grandchildren, I'm not fearful of AI. I think about what it's going to enable us to do and what it can unlock. We just need to come together, create that stability, create that certainty where we can know how to make the investments we need to and move forward.
Haley, thank you so much for your time today and for Entergy's partnership with this program today. I really appreciate it.
You bet. Thank you.